Metrics Network. Today is the Thursday edition, and today I will be resuming the series that I began last week on the 2012 FanGraphs Franchise Player Draft. Basically what we were looking at last week was the first 15 choices, and kind of breaking them down and seeing what we thought of those picks, and if we thought the first 15 drafters did a good job of making their picks and getting good value. Quick reminder, you are building your team from scratch. You have 10 years rights to these players. You can forget about their contracts. All you need to worry about is their future production and essentially how old they are. So without any further ado, let's jump right into pick 16. That's Benjamin Pasinkoff, one of the new Rotographs guys that works on the pitching side of things, working on closer matchups and all that kind of stuff. He selected Starlin Castro, shortstop of the Chicago Cubs. Thing about Castro this year, he's still young, definitely very young, but he's got no walk rate. Basically a 3-year tumble on his walk rate down to about 2% right now. So a little worrisome that he's not taking any walks. Kind of looks like the Delman Young of the infield. And to that point, he may grow out a shortstop, which is also worrisome. If he does outgrow shortstop, and he's not showing the indication yet, actually playing better defense so far this season than in seasons before. If he moves to, say, third, obviously he's going to need to blossom more offensively. And while we don't really have an indication if he's going to be able to do that yet or not. So at 16 might be a little bit of a reach with guys like Miguel Cabrera or Prince Fielder still on the board. Surefire power hitters that are going to have at least 5 more years of production in their tanks. With that in mind, let's move on to pick 17, Brad Woodrum. Bradley is a Tampa Bay fan, works for SB Nation Tampa, does a lot of writing for them. He selected Matt Wieters, Baltimore Orioles catcher, and this is a pick I really like. Wieters definitely being very good this year, has been a great hitter. Also blossomed into probably the best defensive catcher in the American League, if not one of the better defensive players in the entire major leagues. Obviously improving as a hitter. Looks like a guy that the Orioles are maybe going to want to lock up here in the same mold of what they did with Adam Jones. More on Adam Jones later. Ben Duranillo of FanGraphs and Rotographs, obviously, is up with pick number 18, and he selected Miguel Cabrera, so didn't have to wait too long to get Miguel Cabrera off the board. As Duranillo notes in his piece here on FanGraphs, Cabrera's got the highest weighted runs created plus since 2009, so arguably one of the best hitters in the game since then. You're looking at a guy, though, whose walks have been halved and his strikeouts are up. So it's a little bit worrisome in terms of rates, but obviously not a great fielder. But his home runs per fly ball rate is down too, so that might be the statistical noise that's causing his overall line to have plummeted a bit. Obviously, a little bit worried when a guy of that stature tumbles as much as he has this year, but he's still a pretty competent hitter and still doing a pretty good job doing what he needs to do to make that Detroit offense go, even though it's not quite going like it's supposed to. So, like Mike Exisa noted, he's more worried about the first 5 or so years rather than the last 5 years. And to that effect, really not a bad pick with Cabrera, if you ask me. That moves us on to pick number 19, Eric Seidman, former Baseball Prospectus guy when I worked over there too, and now part of Brotherly Glove with his brother Corey, who also does a great job, I might add. He selected Robinson Cano, second baseman of the Yankees. And a little quick note about him, when we asked Ron Gardenhire last year if he could start a team, who he would start one with, he, without even hesitating, said Robinson Cano. So a little bit of intrigue there. Gardy said, you got a second baseman that can hit like that. There's no question in his mind that's who he'd take. With Cano, you got a guy who's got a walk rate that's improving, obviously much better fielder. He's really starting to come into his own at the Keystone there. And already at 3.1 WAR through 67 games played. So on pace for a 7, maybe 8 win season, which is just outstanding, just phenomenal. And a great pick for Seidman here at 19. Moving on to 20, we got Jason Catania. That is one of our Rotographs guys, and he took King Felix Hernandez, Seattle Mariners. There's some worry that Felix might be becoming the next Tim Lincecum in terms of losing velocity and eventually just unraveling. And as Felix approaches the 1,500 innings mark, maybe there's something to that. Ground balls are down, home runs per fly ball up, and 2 miles per hour down across the board on his fastball. That's a little bit worrisome. He's still arguably, in a lot of ways, the same pitcher that he was throwing 93 miles per hour as he is now at 91. But we did say that for a while with Lincecum as his velocity began to tumble too. So where do we go from here with Felix? I'm not entirely sure, because if he continues to tumble and gets down to 89, 90, I don't know that he can sustain 8.5, 9 strikeouts per 9 if he's not at even close to 91, 92 miles per hour. So we'll see where he goes from there. Bill Petty, great baseball mind. I see him on Clubhouse Confidential all the time. He's checking in at, I'm sorry, I skipped ahead of Jackie Moore. Jack Moore, Milwaukee Brewer fan, great writer for FanGraphs. He selected Justin Verlander, who personally I think I would have selected above Felix. I love the durability of Verlander, not Verlander, sorry. Basically posting an awfully similar season to his excellent 2011 campaign. Home runs per 9 are down. Velocity is slightly down, about a mile per hour, but still checking in about 94 miles per hour, which isn't too worrisome. Basically what you got here is the guy who's maybe the most durable starter in the entire game, good for 220 to 240 innings, year in and year out. And I think if I'm really trying to be risk averse and take a pitcher, he might have been the first one off the board for me. But that's just my personal opinion. Obviously, I see him pretty frequently with the Twins playing in the American League Central. Now we can get to Bill Petty, my Clubhouse Confidential correspondent from FanGraphs. He took Manny Machado, so prospect shortstop for the Baltimore Orioles. Went a little bit off the grid with this one. In Bill's defense, I believe Machado was playing a little bit better at the time that we drafted, which was on June 6th, so going on 2-3 weeks ago now. But Machado right now struggling a little bit at Double-A. Obviously still young for the level, not even 20 yet. He's got a 322 weighted on base average down there. And really just still growing into that frame, really getting down the nuances of the game, and obviously he's looking to stick at shortstop long term. One of the better shortstop prospects in the game, one of the best overall prospects in the game. I believe Keith Law bumped him up to number 3 overall with the emergence and graduation of Harper and Trout and guys like that. So obviously not a terrible pick. You may want to go with someone a little more major league ready or established, somebody maybe like a David Wright or an Albert Pujols for one, Prince Fielder maybe for another. Anyway, so first one kind of off the grid so far here in the last 15. That moves us to Zach Sanders. Zach lives out in Washington, is a Seattle Mariners fan. At least that's my understanding. He took Mike Moustakas, third baseman for the Kansas City Royals. And I really like this pick because Moustakas is going to be 23 until September 11th. He's a great defensive third baseman, really starting to come around as a hitter, like a 350 weighted on base average. And in my view, there's a paucity of third baseman in the league right now, especially a quality third baseman. There's guys like David Wright and Ryan Zimmerman and Evan Longoria. But beyond that, there's not a great amount of quantity. There's some quality, but there's not much in the way of quantity. So when you can get a third baseman at that age and that quality, fielding, hitting, all the whole package put together, I think you have to go with it, and I think that's a great pick. Moving on, we have Jeff Zimmerman taking Dustin Pedroia, and this is the first pick that I really don't care for in this bunch of 15 picks here. Pedroia is going to be 29 at the end of the year, so you basically own him until he's 38 or 39, and he already is showing signs of falling off the map. Hasn't been extraordinarily durable. Walks are down, strikeouts are up. Only a 316 weighted on base average, so still a good fielder, still a pretty good second baseman when you consider the competition at second base league-wide. But he's not going to be young much longer, and even if he gives you 3 or 4 more years of production, you really need to get 4 or 5 to make it worth your time. So Zimmerman goes a little bit off the board here, and I think that I probably would have gone in another direction. But that's just me. So the Dark Overlord, David Cameron, comes up at 25. He takes Brett Lowry, third baseman for the Toronto Blue Jays, and obviously the massively tattooed third baseman from up north has been a bit of a disappointment so far this season. Numbers down a little bit across the board, but he's going to be 22 all season long. Great defensively, and he's still coming off a monster season, and he's still showing some signs of growth. His production is down, but he's also slashed his strikeouts. So you're looking at a guy who's still showing some signs of growth with the bat. May need to show some signs maturity-wise, obviously getting thrown into games and all that kind of stuff. But you're looking at a guy who's going to grow into his game more as the seasons wear on, and is a good pick here in the late first round at number 25. So hats off to Dave Cameron on that one. Matt Clausen checks in at 26. And he takes Eric Hosmer, first baseman of Kansas City. So a little bit of a run on Kansas City players here. Hosmer, K's down, walks up, but that's about all the positive things you can say about him so far this year. Really struggling with the bat. Not exactly picking it over at first base either. So as a result, right now, he's actually getting benched for Billy Butler while they're on interleague in the National League Park with no DH. With Hosmer, you're hoping that since he's 22 all year long, this is a bit of a sophomore slump and that he can break out of it. Still projects to be a great hitter. Still looks like he's going to be pretty good. And it's only been 200, 250, 300 plate appearances so far this year. So you're not too worried about him long term yet. But in the comments section, there were some people saying that they would have gone in another direction instead of Hosmer, maybe like a Prince Fielder. And I don't think I can argue with that either. You got to go with a proven guy when you're starting a new franchise in a lot of respects. So we move on to Chad Young. Chad is the commissioner of the Auto News Staff League that I'm in. And he takes Buster Posey of the San Francisco Giants. And Posey has come a long way back from the knee injury that basically cost him almost the entire 2011 season. Posey has not quite gotten back to that level yet, but he's really impressive in a lot of ways. Not a single pop-up yet this year. The one thing that I worry about with Posey going forward is that he does not lift the ball that much, so I think his power potential is a bit limited. He's very ground ball heavy, so he could be maybe a right-handed Joe Mauer, and that's not necessarily a bad thing at all. Joe Mauer's an absolutely fantastic hitter. I'm actually catching the game here on the side. But when you think about Posey's ceiling, you don't want to expect him to hit 25, 28, 30 home runs because he just doesn't get the lift required. I think he's still going to be a dynamic talent. He might be a big doubles guy. And if he can stick behind the plate, and they seem to think at least for a while he can, that's a pretty good pick if he can stick back there 5 to 7 more years. So Michael Barr is up at 28. He takes Jurickson Profar, the Texas Rangers shortstop prospect, that may be the guy who supplants Elvis Andrus at shortstop. Profar absolutely killing it at Double-A right now. I believe that's Frisco for Double-A for the Rangers. And he was born in 1993. He will not be 20 until next February, and he is doing a great job. He's got 7 long balls, 9 stolen bases, and that's just in about a half a season of work. So when you're looking at a guy who's growing into his frame, is expected to play pretty good defense, this is going to be a guy that could be a dynamic talent. And if he pushes Andrus aside, either for a trade or they have to work something out to get all those guys in the same infield, it's going to be worth it for the Rangers to explore those possibilities. And the Profile looks like a guy who could be a year and a half, maybe less, I don't know, away from breaking into the big time. So I really love this pick for Barr here at number 28. At 29, we get the reemergence from Eno Saris here of Jason Hayward. And Hayward's kind of still battling the great expectations levied upon him following an excellent 2010 rookie campaign. Now, he went off the radar a little bit last year in 2011, stumbled a bit, had like a .319 on-base percentage, and really just didn't get going at any point. Actually, was my preseason MVP pick, so had a little egg on my face over that one. So yeah, the expectations are a little bit tough on Hayward, who's not going to be 23 until the 9th of August. Basically, he's a great fielder. His numbers are starting to come back. He's not there yet. He's about 30 points off on weighted on-base average to get back to that, but he'll get there, I think. Finally, the last pick, and probably the most head-scratching one of all, is Nolan Arenado above Howard Bender. And obviously, I'm rocking the Rockies tee tonight. Big Arenado fan, but I don't even know if Arenado's the 30th best prospect in the game, let alone pick number 30 in a franchise draft. So that pick is a little bit puzzling. I don't know how to break it down more than that. He's got a .338 weighted on base average at Double-A. So let's go over the list of omissions that were put in that could have been picked at 30 that would have been a better pick. You got David Wright, Albert Pujols, Prince Fielder, Josh Hamilton absolutely murdering the American League this year. You got Cole Hamels, Dylan Bundy, who would have been another pick, Pablo Sandoval, Aroldis Chapman, Austin Jackson, Adam Jones, Madison Bumgarner, Zach Greinke, Jared Weaver, Adrian Gonzalez, David Price, Carlos Santana, Jesus Montero, Matt Moore, Jacoby Ellsbury, injured, been out most of the year, Ian Kinsler, Curtis Granderson, and Ryan Zimmerman. All would have been much better picks and could have supplanted some of these guys in there and been better choices than some of these guys made. So I'm quickly running out of time here, so I'm going to have to let you all go. But I thank you for joining me and hope I can see you all next